Okay, sorry for being late, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Our dear God, we thank you for this day and for all the things that we've accomplished today and the ability to serve you through another day. We pray that you will watch over us now as we study your word, and that you will help us, guide us in understanding your word, and help us to apply what we learn, that we might follow less and less the course of this world and more be like your Son, Jesus. And we thank you for sending him to be our example and to be our sacrifice, that we might be with you in heaven when this life is over. And we pray that you will help us to accomplish this, dear God. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right. Where's John? Oh. Missing child. All right. No need to panic. All right, so we are going to continue talking about the selfishness of this world, which is lesson 9. We started talking about this on Sunday, and we talked about the example of Jesus and his selflessness and his teaching on how those that would follow him must deny everything, deny themselves even, and take up their cross. And so that's what's expected of us as Christians is that selflessness. We talked about how we are to be living sacrifices, and as Jesus said, we carry our cross daily. And so there's no room for us to reserve part of ourselves to serve ourselves. We are living sacrifices to God, totally, every day. It's not a matter of, well, today I will serve God and be selfless, but tomorrow I'll serve myself and do what I want to do. No, every day. Every day we are serving God. Every day we are selfless and serving God and serving others. So I want to talk at length about an example that Paul gives us of selflessness. We're going to look for a while at 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and following. And we're going to do some reading, because I think we have to read chapters 8 and 9 to really understand what Paul is trying to say here. But the author of our book talks about the obsession with exercising personal rights. Now, what does that have to do with selfishness? Yes. Okay, all right. Yeah, so we think about what we're entitled to, what we have a right to. It's my right to do what I want to do, and I don't consider others. I don't consider what is best for others. I consider what is my right to do. A good example that's been in the news lately is flag burning. Okay, we recently had a statement from Donald Trump that those that burn flags should be, what did he say? Should have their citizenship revoked or a year in jail. And so, you know, I put something on my Facebook wall about that, and wow, the discussion that ensued was incredible. I've never had such a reaction to anything that I put on Facebook before. And you know, whether you think Donald Trump was right or not is not really the point. The point is, if you believe that you have a right to do such a thing, is it the right thing to do? Is what we need to understand. I may have a right to burn the flag. I may have a right to do any number of things according to the law, but is it the right thing to do? And that's what we have to think about as Christians. And one thing that I'll point out in the discussion, there was at least one, maybe more, people that would profess to be Christians who said, well, they have the right to, express whatever idiot opinion they have, and I have a right to put my fist through their face. I'm like, what? Really? Is this what we want to portray as Christians? That you exercise your rights and I'll exercise mine, and this is not the attitude that we're supposed to have. And I think this is what Paul is teaching, except he's not talking about politics. In 1 Corinthians chapter 8, he's talking about food. And so I'd like to start by reading 1 Corinthians chapter 8. So could I have someone read that? The entire chapter. It's 13 verses. Please. Yes.
Now as touching things offered to idols, you know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffed up, that charity edifies. And if any man think that he knoweth anything, he knoweth nothing yet as he ought to know. But if any man love God, the same is known of him. As concerning thereof the eating of those things that are offered and sacrifices unto idols. We know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other God but one. For though we be that are called gods, where in heaven or in earth, and therefore be gods many, and lords many. But to us there is but one God, the Father of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord Jesus Christ, by whom all things we be by him. Howbeit there is none in every man that knowledge. For some with concerns of the idols unto this hour eat it as a thing offered unto an idol, and there concerning being weak is defiled. But meat commandeth us not to God, for neither if we eat are we the better, neither if we eat not are we the worse. But take heed lest by eating this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak. But if any man see thee, which has knowledge, sit at meat in the idol's temple, shall not the concerns of him which is weak be embroidered with meat? We eat those things which are offered to idols, and through by knowledge shall be eat brother Herod, for whom Christ died. But when ye sin so against the brethren, and would that we concern, yet sin against Christ. Wherefore, if meat make my brother but sin, I will eat no flesh while the world standeth, lest I make my brother offend.
Okay. All right. So you see the situation here. Apparently they have, the Corinthians have written to Paul talking about this issue of food offered to idols. And they seem to have made the argument that idols aren't anything. We know that there's only one God, right? Idols are just statues. I mean, there's nothing to them, right? So if there's meat offered to idols, well, they're offered to nothing, so why can't we eat that? No big deal, right? So they're making the argument that it's okay for them to eat this meat. Alright, so from what I can tell here, what Paul is doing is he's saying, okay, let's say you're right. Let's say idols, there's nothing to idols. Let's say that eating the meat offered to idols, no problem. Okay, let's just grant you that point for now. Think about your brother. Think about your weak brother who thinks that there is something to it. All right, in verse 7. Some, through former association with idols, eat food as really offered to an idol, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. Okay, so what has that brother just done? That's eaten this food to offer to idols.
Participated in idolatry.
Okay, in his heart, he's participated in idolatry. Yes. Okay. Okay, all right. And so he's saying, is it of any benefit if they eat the food to idols? Is there any benefit to that? No, he says food will not commend us to God in verse 8. We are no worse off if we do not eat, and no better off if we do. There's no reason to eat this meat offered to idols. So, the point is, take care, in verse 9, that this right, or liberty as the King James says, that this right of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. So, Paul's saying, let's say that you're right. Let's say you do have the right to eat this meat. Is it the right thing to do? No. No. Why? Treatment of others is more important than being right. And if they were to eat of this meat, and one of these weak brethren were to see them, what would happen? Or what could happen? They would stumble. They would stumble, and they would violate their conscience. And they would be encouraged to do so by their actions. Yes? Right, right. Yeah, we're going to talk about Channel 9. Right.
Have I not seen Jesus our Lord? And then it goes on, give to others I'm an apostle, at least you I am.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you go ahead and...
Do I not have the right to be the
Right, go ahead and read chapter 9. That's where we're going to go next. Go ahead and read chapter 9 for us.
I'm not getting ahead of it.
No. That's perfect. All right.
One thing that I want to point out.
Oh, yeah.
He gives this whole discussion by statement that Lane tells me is not a word they agree with his opinion. Knowledge puffs up, love builds up.
Right. And how did he? And what did he start off talking about? Their knowledge. We have knowledge. We know that idols are nothing, right? Well, what did that do? That puffed them up, right? Right. Okay, so go ahead and read chapter 9 now.
Am I not free? Am I not an apostle? Have I not seen Jesus our Lord? Are you not my work in the Lord? If to others I'm not an apostle, at least I am to you. For you are the seal of my apostleship with the Lord. My defense to those who examine me is this: do we not have a right to eat and drink? Do we not have a right to take along his wife, the rest of the apostles, brothers of the Lord, and Cephas? Or do only Barnabas and I not have a right to portray the Lord? Who at any time serves as a soldier at his own expense, who has a vineyard and does not eat the fruit of it? Who tends a flock at his time to go to the flock? I am not speaking these things according to human judgment, am I? For does the law not also say these things? For it is written in the law of Moses, "You shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing." God is not concerned about oxen, is he? Or is he speaking altogether for our sake? Yes, for our sake it is written, "If we plow and not the plow, the thresher, Moses carried the cross." If we sow the spiritual things in you, it is correction, if others share the right over you, be not one. Nevertheless, we did not use this right, but we endure all things, so that people cause no good to the gospel of God. Do you not know that those who perform sacred services eat the food of the temple, and those who attend regularly to the altar have their share from the altar? So also the Lord directed those who were playing the gospel to make their living from the gospel. But I have used none of these things. I am not writing these things so that it will be done so in my case, for it would be better for me to die than to have any man make my boast in me. For if I preach the gospel, I have nothing to boast about, for I am under compulsion. Well, woe is me if I do not preach the gospel. For if I do this voluntarily, I have a reward. But if against my will, I have a stewardship from it. What then is my reward? That when I preach the gospel, I may offer the gospel without charge, so as not to make full use of my right in the gospel. For though I am free from all men, I made myself a slave to all, so that I may win more. For the Jews become a Jew, so that I might win Jews. For those who are under the law, as under the law, so that not being myself under the law, so that I might win those who are under the law. For those who are without law, as without law. Though not being without the law of God, but under the law of Christ, so that I might win those who are without law. For the weak, I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, so that I may be all things. By all means, save some. I do all things for the sake of the gospel, so that I may become a fellow for others. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? But in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in the game exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Therefore I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air, but I discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified.
Okay, so as Mark said, these two chapters go together. Paul hasn't switched subjects here. Okay? And look at what he talks about in verse 3. Do we not have the right to eat and drink? Do we not have the right to take along a believing wife? And so on and so forth. What he's doing here is he's offering himself up as an example of how the Corinthians should act. They thought they had the right to eat this meat offered to idols. Paul says, well, I have the right to do these things. But what? I don't do them. Why? Why doesn't he do them? Why doesn't he have a believing wife? Why doesn't he eat and drink? Why doesn't he take money for preaching the gospel? Okay, all right. Yes, he says he does everything for the gospel, right? To save others. Yes.
It does seem to be indicated there's something he was doing with Corinthians. He takes money from other churches while he works in Corinth, which made them really mad at him. And it seems that the main major explanation is that accepting their money would have obligated him in some way, would have made him beholden to them in some way that would have been disruptive to the preaching of the gospel.
Right, exactly. And it seems to have something to do with those who would examine him, those that who would criticize him. And so he's trying to make sure that there's no room for criticism, is the idea. This is what he talks about in verse 16. For if I preach the gospel, verse 15. I have made no use of any of these rights, nor am I writing these things to secure any such provision, for I would rather die than have anyone deprive me of my ground for boasting. When he says boasting there, he's not talking about, well, look at me, I don't take money for preaching, look how good I am. No, he's not talking about that. But he's talking about that is a proof of his motivation. That is proof that he is genuine in his work for the gospel. Anybody that would examine him, that would accuse him of simply preaching for money or simply preaching, for reputation, he's seeking none of those things here, and it's evident. So he does that to make sure that no one has any room to say, well, we shouldn't follow you. We're not going to believe your gospel because we don't trust your motivation. Yes?
Also, in light of chapter 8, I think it's key for us here because my rights are not important.
Exactly.
Your rights are more important than my rights.
Right.
And that's the way a Christian ought to act toward his brethren.
Right.
His brethren will say, I have a right to sacrifice an idol because God is nothing. Paul is saying, it says, I will love God, love Bill's side. You love your brethren, it's not going to do something.
Right.
You're going to stay away from it. Look at what I have a right to do, what I'm doing up. God, for your sake, so that I can know.
Exactly. Exactly right. Yes.
One thing, this is your brain. This, the word for right, the word for authority, are the same word in the New Testament, and it comes out quite a bit. I mean, it comes out even in our expressions. So, where do you get the authority to do this? Where do you get the authority to do that? What is it? Right. Ask Jesus that. Broke the temple. Paul here, he says, you all think you have the authority, but I'm an apostle. I actually have authority. You know what I do with that apostolic authority? Well, I don't use it to beat people up over the head. I use it for building up, not for tearing down. That comes up again in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 8. If I go somewhat further about our authority, which the Lord gave for building you up and not for destroying you, I will not be put to shame. That's the idea. This is the question. Being an authority, having an authority, being an authority figure, doesn't mean you use that authority to tear other people down and exalt yourself. You use it to build up others. That's the main function that authority serves. Exactly. If it's not being used that way, then it shouldn't be used at all.
Right. Okay. All right. So does everybody see what Paul is saying here? Does this make sense to everyone? Do we see how this is an example? When we think about our rights, what we have the right to do, our first thought should be, what is right to do? What is going to be beneficial to my brothers and sisters? What is going to be beneficial to others? Okay? Now, it may be that standing up for your rights is beneficial to others. We might make that point as well. But we can't just be standing up for our rights selfishly because the right is there. We have to consider what is good for others. Yes, Ray.
Saying earlier that they're not exactly what they are. Paul also stresses in Romans, the things that are not I do. He said, I want to see this. So I was looking at all that, and I was looking at verse 24. Know ye not that they come in a race run all, but one receives the prize, though run, that ye may obtain. Obtain from our sisters and brothers of living, build it up. Jesus came to teach that we may exalt others higher than ourselves. He didn't come so we could be equal. None of us are equal, but what he taught was that there's a greatness in all of us to call each other up higher than Paul is showing right here, because they teach is, we come as they are.
Right.
We ourselves, I done got there, so I'm looking for the word.
That's all right.
We do, I'm not saying sin, but we diminish ourselves in order to exalt somebody else. So I guess that's the best word for us.
Okay, all right. So we don't. I want to make sure I say it right.
Someone is reaching out for Christ, way not way.
With a haughty attitude, or trying to show off your knowledge of the Bible, or I think that's the same principle. I mean, certainly we don't want to deny the truth. I mean, and we want to try to build each other up through the truth, and not just ignoring problems that we might have. But we also want to have that attitude of love. Because that's what builds up. Love builds up. Knowledge puffs up, as we've said before. So yeah, that's a good point. Appreciate that. I did want to point out this part in verse 24, where he talks about running the race, running that so that you receive the prize, run so that you obtain it, bringing yourself under self-control, not boxing like you're beating the air. Okay, I think what he's doing is telling the Corinthians that's what you're doing when you go and you create all these arguments to allow yourself to eat these meats. You're not running like you want to run the race. You're boxing like you're just beating the air. You're not thinking about what you really need to be doing. You're thinking about what you want to do. You're thinking about justifying yourselves. And he's saying, with this example that I've given you, through this, where I've denied myself, these rights that I have, so that I can bring people to Christ, the way that I am all things to all people, this is me bringing myself under self-control. I don't do what it is that I want to do. I do what it is that's going to bring people to the gospel and bring people to Christ and build others up. That's how he runs the race, so that he can win, by building others up. And so I think that's an important connection there. All right. So now, and then in chapter 10, he explains why they're wrong about eating meat offered to idols. so he gives them a carrot. He says, "Okay, I'm going to tell you you're right about this, but let me tell you why you're still wrong." And then he says, "Now, this carrot, I'm taking that away. You're not even right in your reasoning about the meat offered to idols. You shouldn't be doing that. You can't partake with idols." And so that's basically what chapter 10's about.
That's the Paul just talking about. We have to be right related with people. Love builds up and knowledge puffs up. He still has no problem telling them that you were wrong about just about every facet of this argument.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, and right. That's a great point. I mean, when you get to chapter 10, you find out who the weak brethren are. Who are they? The ones eating meat offered to idols. They're the weak ones. But he calls the other weak because that's how they thought of them. They said, "Oh, they're weak. They don't understand that idols don't mean anything." Right. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, you just hit it on the head what I was trying to say. I went all the way around the Mulberry.
Okay.
I'm just going to be honest. I got nervous along the way.
Yeah.
But see, that's about how the situation we're in. We come from a whole different teaching and stuff like that. A lot of things we was taught that was okay. Now we look at it and see that it's not okay. And so I gotta say this. I thank God for Wayne and you and certain others, because y'all take the time to come and say, exactly what Paul was saying. Don't beat them over the head, but point out the area that's a hinder,
right,
where they can grow in.
Right.
A lot of people don't take time to do that. Thus stands the word.
Yeah.
That ain't how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be with love and kindness.
Right. Certainly. Yes. Thank you. No, that's perfect. I appreciate that. Yeah. So do we have a right to look at the Word and say, well, it teaches this, so I'm going to, and they're not doing that, so I'm going to go, just chastise them and make them feel really bad? Well, the Word may give me the right to tell the truth, but what's best for them, Yeah, so.
Exactly. The reaction you have from one guy is not the one they have from another. It depends on the context.
Yeah.
There are situations, sure, where you really do need to kind of
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell someone directly. I mean, I've known of situations where they had to resort to physically restraining a guy, I think, and knowing what I know about the situation, I thought it was totally appropriate.
Yeah.
But because that was the only way that they were going to get through to them the message of the truth.
Right.
It's like Jude says in Jude.
Verses 22 and 23, have mercy on some who are doubting, save others, snatching them out of the fire, and on some have mercy with fear, hating each the garment polluted by the flesh.
Some people, you got to be a little kinder, use a softer touch. Some people, you just got to drag them out, kicking and screaming.
Right. So, yeah, and with love, we can know which one to do.
Got to get them out of the fire.
Right. All right. Very good. Any other comments on Paul's example here? All right. No? Okay. All right. So now, I said Sunday we're going to talk about what the author really wants to talk about, which is abortion. And I see where he's coming from. I see where kind of how this fits in, but it does feel a little like he shoehorned this topic into this lesson. What does abortion have to do with selfishness? Okay. All right.
It's more of that same idea. I have the right. But the arguments for it are things like, well, I have the right to do what I want with my body, which is very much the same vein as other kinds of I don't want to deal with this. I have a career, I have this, that. I have all of these other things I would rather be doing. It boils down to self-interest.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to be burdened with a child that has a disability. There's another one.
All right.
So, in some countries, we were talking about this Tuesday night. In some countries, they infanticide if the child's a girl instead of a boy because they're being gender selective about it. Another instance of selfishness. They have an idea of what they want, and it's not what they want. Well, it's a kill.
Okay. All right. So that's basically where we're going with this. First, let's look at just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Let's look at Exodus chapter 21. Just to make sure, because as Christians we should all be on the same page on this. I think the Bible is pretty clear. What God thinks of this. Someone read Exodus 21 verses 22 through 25, please. Exodus 21.
When men struggle with each other and strike a woman with child, so that she gives birth prematurely, yet there is no injury, he shall surely be fined as the woman's husband may demand of him, and he shall pay as the judges decide. But if there is any further injury, then you shall appoint as penalty life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise.
Okay, so it's that last sentence that I want us to focus on. Now remember, we're talking about two men struggling. They hit a pregnant woman, the child comes out, and there's damage. Okay, what is the penalty? Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 19. And someone please read verses 15 through 21.
I shall not
Okay, so we have the same penalty for grown people as we have for the child damaged in the womb. Does that sound right? Am I interpreting that correctly? So does that not mean that God equates the life in the womb with the life of you and I? And so if there is a penalty for damaging by accident the life in the womb, that is life for life and so on, what if we take that life on purpose? Is that any less? No. It's the same. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right.
To take a page out of Paul's book, even if, for the sake of argument, there was ambiguity on this question. Since when does ambiguity on someone's status make it okay to kill? When has that ever made sense?
Mm-hmm. By ambiguity, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, the question arises. There's a translational issue that exists. It's really technical and confusing, and frankly, I think the version we read here was right anyway. So.
Okay.
But some people will sometimes bring that up and try to use that to advance the argument that, maybe God didn't consider the fetus in the womb to be a person on the same level and whatnot. And so there's another argument that is sometimes put forth of this ambiguity. I've heard other people, Christians supposedly, argue that, it's not alive until it breathes the breath of life. And I've heard arguments like this, which to me, I'm not very impressed by. Because the whole bottom line of it is that even if they were right, even if there's some confusion on the matter or some subject of ambiguity on the subject, not okay to kill. And when did we even? Why are we? Why does this whole thing boil down to an ethical debate about when life begins or when life doesn't begin? Frankly, I think that's a red herring. What the real issue is what happens when you've got one group of people whose rights are being marginalized and another group of people whose rights are being marginalized. How do you resolve the conflict? I know one way you don't resolve it: by killing. That's my issue.
Right. No? Yes. Right. That's a very good point. So as Christians, I think the Bible is pretty clear. I don't know where there's any ambiguity on that. Right. Now, so people try. And when we talk about ambiguity, we talk about, in popular discussions about this subject, people will use the term fetus to refer to the baby in the womb. And I've even known cases where a man was conducting an interview with a doctor, an abortion doctor, and the interview was going well until he called it a baby. And as soon as he called it a baby, he said, "I'm not going to take this," and he hung up the phone. They don't want to hear that is a baby in there. They want to call it a fetus. Why? It's less personal, okay? More sanitary?
There were a lot of other people that burning them in his oven. They didn't want to see it. After the war, when Eisenhower made the people in the village were supposed to come and parade through the camp. They were war on. They had, they closed their minds because they were confident.
Yeah.
There's horror going on right now.
Yeah. So we do these things to get around the thought that we're actually killing a human being. And because that thought is horrible to everyone. Even an abortion doctor would not want to kill someone, right? And yeah, and so this is making me upset as I stand here. Sorry. It's a very upsetting subject, and I've seen horrific things on this. So, but we're talking about selfishness, right? So, the reasons given for doing this, we've already talked about some of them. The other one, the intellectual argument, you might say, is that why would we want to bring more children into this world? This is an awful place, and perhaps there are some people that shouldn't bring children into this world because they are incapable of taking care of them. And so why would we want them? Why shouldn't we encourage them to abort their babies? Right?
I've heard that kind of talk from Christians, although to advance a different argument.
Okay, I've heard of a case where there was a teenage girl, became pregnant. Her father, who was an elder at a congregation, tried to encourage her to have an abortion, and she said no. Why would he do that? Selfishness. He didn't want his reputation to be harmed. He didn't want to have to step down as an elder, perhaps, because
Step down after suggesting that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So we.
You're concerned about the latter than the former.
Right. So we really need to be sure in our faith and sure in what the Bible teaches, and when we're faced with these situations, deny everything else except Christ, and take up our cross. Okay, we need to be willing to do that. Now, regarding the intellectual argument that I talked about, why would you bring more children into this world? They're not going to be able to take care of them, so on and so forth. Do you know how many people there are that are just waiting to adopt a child? So all of these arguments from selfishness have no merit, is what I'm trying to say. And so we need to, I'm trying very hard not to preach to people that aren't here, but I want us to think about these things and understand these things and internalize these things, so that if this ever comes up in our lives, in our families, then we have a proper attitude and a proper conviction of denying everything else except for Christ, no matter how difficult it is. And let me tell you, I cannot empathize with a woman who is pregnant. I just can't. I don't know. I don't know how that is. I don't know what it's like to have a baby inside of you. I may look like it, but I don't know. I don't really know. All right, and so I can't. I feel like I'm being very, very harsh on this subject because I don't know where you ladies are coming from on this, but I do know what the Bible teaches, and that's all I can speak to. And I wish that you guys would let me know, if you think I'm way off base, or if I need to approach the subject differently. But we have to, no matter how difficult it is, we have to put Christ first and deny everything else. Okay? All right. Well, I don't know. I feel like I didn't do that justice, but yes.
I guess kind of going back to the previous point, if like there is a woman that who is unmarried and pregnant, then I guess we don't leave her over to the next person either.
Exactly. If we know somebody that's had an abortion, we don't beat them over the head with that sin either. what we're talking about is putting our hands to the plowshare and going forward. We leave all that behind us, right? We let Christ take care of our past sins, and we go forward. And that's our job. That's how we love and build up. Okay. Anything else that should be said?
The idea is, again, formerly walked according to the course of this law. We're that.
Right.
We're not that people. We're not supposed to be.
Right.
That requires a transformation of our thinking.
Right. Okay. Whew, tough subject to the end there. I hope that was helpful to everyone else as it was to me. And we will talk about Lesson 10. Sorry we didn't get to the questions again. Lesson 10, the fornicators of this world. Well, that should be exciting on Sunday.